think right now we're in this, oh my God, we're living in the future is what it feels like. Like we are every day, there's a new tool every day, every week, every month, every year. There's something that is growing so fast with this world of technology. Like just go back 3 years ago, like everything was so different in terms of how we use the tools that we use day to day.
This episode is about building brands that people actually believe in. Joining me today is Jacob Kleinman Phillips. Jacob, welcome. Who are you and what do you do?
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you, Max. Like you said, I'm Jacob Kleinman Phillips. I'm a brand design strategist. And what I do specifically is I help purpose driven brands reach a level that actually allows people to rally behind what they're all about, their mission, what they stand for, and how they help the humans that they serve.
Awesome. Awesome. I first connected with you through the Daddles talk last year, where you mentioned leading before you feel ready. And that idea kind of stuck with me and honestly help push me to start this podcast. So I have you to thank for this mess. Um, it, is that something you still believe?
Lead before you're ready. You know what's funny? I actually I used that framework as I was building the talk, believing in the talk as well. Like I think it was kind of a catch 22. I think, do I believe in that? Absolutely. Is that my foundation? Is that my philosophy? Yes. And I think every time you run into an obstacle in front of you, you almost have to imposter syndrome your way through it again. So I think I hit that
Sure.
and I went, wow, this is scary. This is fearful. This is okay. Now I know I'm in this right spot. And so it was kind of to be able to teach that and also feel that internally. I think it meant that it was the right step. And so it's funny how you're saying it inspired the podcast. I think no matter how much experience people have or how long they've been in industries or where they come from, they're still going to run into things that feel like a mountain maybe, or before you start stepping, and you still just have to work your way through one step at a time, and you might not have a clear answer or a clear path. So fundamentally, absolutely, I still am locked in, and I believe
Long
that.
way around. Yes. So you're working in the intersection of brand strategy and storytelling. What kind of pulled you into that space?
Okay, great question. I think for me, the space actually, so does I went to school for industrial design, and for me it was a philosophy that taught me how to see the world around you and almost get to the core purpose of how something functions in the world and how that's brought to life and solves a need. And that became like a backbone for me in terms of how I saw the world, and use design
Right.
as that, not weapon of choice, but like superpower of choice to be able to then accomplish and solve that problem. And so I learned design as a way to be that bridge. And then I think slowly you started to learn, like, storytelling to me is like the presentation for it. And I think,
Of course.
as a byproduct, you learn the skills, you learn the way to communicate, you learn the way to communicate enough that someone can understand your idea. So you kind of came out with the design skills and the storytelling. And what the interesting thing of how it evolved to where I am with branding right now is it wasn't always branding. And so I don't think it was always storytelling in my head either. I think it was design. I think design for me wasn't as much maybe graphic design. It was definitely 3D experiential design. It was definitely product
Sure.
design.
Sure.
So it was like more tangible than I think it was anything storytelling. And what slowly happened, and actually the biggest pivot was COVID. And I don't know how much you want to dive into this, but the business started a month before COVID, and it flip flopped
Oh, wow. Yeah.
what my business was. It typically was 3D, tangible. I was designing for marketing agencies doing experiential trade show booths and tactile experiences. When COVID hit, that knocked all of those clients out the window because there was no in-person events anymore. And
Right.
so
Right.
what did happen was all of the people that lost jobs because of COVID went, all right, well, I guess I'll start that side hustle business I've been dreaming about that I never did. And so there was this
Yeah.
influx of small businesses, people that were solopreneurs, or there was a family, or they just started to want to bring to life their own ideas. And so my audience changed and my services changed from that to small businesses, and from design and in-person experiential to probably, well, not probably, but more fundamental strategy and storytelling and branding. And that's where the transition happened, because I was very experienced in the diversity of what someone needed in their ecosystem, but I
Yeah.
hadn't physically focused on all the pieces. And then that's what you called branding and storytelling, is the whole ecosystem, which hopefully that makes sense to you. But
Absolutely. Absolutely. Jacob, what shaped the way you see the world creatively?
okay. Can I say who as well? Can I put in a person
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
okay,
Absolutely.
so
Yeah.
creatively, definitely, obviously the creative experiences that I was exposed to, I'll say this because my parents are I have two parents, one's a general contractor and one is like a ceramicist and very creative. So I have one that's like
Yeah.
organically creative, and then one that is structurally creative and problem solving. And like I come from both of those parents, that you combine those two, and that's how I think and how I was raised. Now, two of the
It's
people,
really
oh
funny
yeah.
as our most recent episode just had almost an identical answer, is that combination of
Oh,
both of their parents,
wow.
one more in the arts, one more like how to fix things functionally, and
Yeah, yeah.
it was like a perfect storm for an industrial designer.
Just quickly, but where did they end up? Like, what is their career at the moment? Is it in design still?
Yeah, they are actually working at a consultancy that does consumer electronics, so like full on core industrial design stuff.
So it became a really strong foundation for their navigation,
Sure.
their evolution. Okay. So that, hands down, that's like, right, the best answer that I can give. Then I will say there's two people along the way that helped shape that and define it. And the
Absolutely.
first
Yeah.
one, I think there's a philosophy in terms of how I understood design, and then there's a business and how I translated that into what I do now. First one is Owen Foster. He was a professor of mine at SCAD over in Savannah, Georgia, and he he fundamentally shaped like the transformative thinking piece for me, and he was just a
Gotcha.
huge influence. And one way he would do that is he would come in and he would never answer questions. He would just give more riddles. Like, that was his creative brief. It's like, wait, dude, I grew up, all I was taught was how to find answers, memorize them, and then, here's the answer for the test. And it was never that. It was always like you always had to
Right.
find the answer yourself, and it was confusing and it felt weird and it was uncomfortable. And his stupid catchphrase was embrace ambiguity. And I was like, I just give me
Uh,
the answer. Why do I have to feel comfortable in this unknown? And that's the creative process. It fundamentally, you have to learn the tools to think and the tools to communicate visually. So that helped me see the world in a different lens, because then it went, okay, take a product. What's this vessel? Is it a cup, or is it just fundamentally the transportation of water from one place to the other? Well, then why does it have to look like a cup? Why can't it look like a box? Why can't
exactly.
it be an umbrella? Why? And then you start to first world principles in a way. And it evolved for me what that those lessons have how those lessons have turned into in my career. But that was one of the biggest components to it. The second component was, once I transitioned and I started to own my own business, um, knowing design and getting a job for it and getting hired for it is one thing. Knowing it and getting paid for it on your own is another thing. It's like running a business is different than getting paid in a
Yeah.
job for design. And
Oh yeah.
the piece that you're missing is how to make sales. So I
Yep.
was really good at design. I was really skilled at design, but I didn't know how to sell it in a way that it would solve a problem for the needs of the clients that I had, not the needs of the business that I worked for. And so I fell face first, like flat on the pavement,
Yeah.
because I was very good at, here's this beautiful design, here's how, whatever, right? But then I saw a lot of friction because first off, I wasn't profitable because I was spending so much extra time perfecting this thing. So that we can talk about that more, but the person that helped me was having a business coach. I was lucky enough to hire Pia Silva in her coaching program. This is, I want to say, year two of my business. And what it did fundamentally was streamline my thinking and create me a process and create me steps to take a client from what they're asking for and actually transform them into the solution and solving their problem, and using design to do that. It was a little bit different because I thought, let me just incubate
Yeah.
you into my creative process. No, let's start with alignment, let's start with strategy, and then let's solve the exact problem that you have and use design as a tool to do that. I was using this design to do the whole thing, I think. That would be my thought
Sure.
process
Sure.
there.
That's great because that's not something we normally are taught or have the time to be taught in school in an undergrad design program. A lot of times, is really the business of being a designer at that level of how do you shift from the problem is that you're solving is maybe a physical or a graphic output to the problem you're solving is your own business.
Right. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And again, you might be taught pieces of that, but it's different being a, maybe even a freelancer, or working for a business, working, you're given a creative brief, and you're not having to divine what happens before the creative brief. How did you even get that client in
Right.
there? Right?
Right.
Did it
Right.
fall on
Right.
your lap, or
How do you,
did you
how do
have to
you,
go
yeah,
network for it? Like,
absolutely.
how did that happen?
Yeah. Yep. Jacob, what project taught you the most, even if it did not succeed?
All right, well then let's build on this, because I'll share the one that fell flat, completely, because um we'll put the word failure in there in context of, that is a piece where I had a lot of learning. So to build
Okay.
on that, let's go to that moment where we're within those first couple years of the business. And I had a client, Game on State specifically, and I'll even share like the details on it because it's one of my most successful projects, but it also had one of the biggest failures in the, in the process of getting to that
Yeah.
point. And specifically, from a business lens, I wasn't clear on exactly what my service offerings were, and how I was kind of talking about profitability. I
Yeah.
hadn't learned where my wheelhouse was yet in terms of what I had to offer. I was offering everything because, again, from having parents that were general contractors to ones that were in pottery and like, the vast ecosystem of what I could do is very wide. So if you needed a kitchen
Right.
backsplash, I was on it. If you wanted a fish pond in your backyard, oh, I'm your guy. You wanted a logo for your coffee company, I'm also like, I was stretched, and stretching is great. And actually, I'm glad I did that because I took in and I opened up the world of clients and I got a little bit of everything everywhere. But then I also would fall flat when there was something that required specialty. I learned all the
Okay.
lessons of how to lose money because something took too long.
Yeah.
I didn't know
Yeah.
that there was these other steps behind it. So Game on State was a project that had everything. And specifically, I was doing the build out. I was doing, like, it was an arcade and a candy shop, and they were
Okay.
their mission was about helping employ and create jobs for people with disabilities. So they were like this hidden arcade
Gotcha.
and candy shop. They had a mission behind it, and they were moving into a storefront and just starting their whole business. And so they hired me to design them the interior of the entire place, the exterior of what the front would look like, the branding of how this thing identity would look like, the website of how this would, translate digitally.
Wow, soup to
And
nuts.
and I was exhilarating, like absolutely. Like I was like,
Yeah,
this is my wheelhouse. Like I know all of it. Let's put it together. And doing it, like, we nailed it. We absolutely nailed it. But on the back end, nobody knows that it killed me to the death of me, in the point where we're
right.
staying up late, we're pulling all nighters, we're trying to get these things all done. And we didn't realize that when you are trying to translate physical to digital and doing every step of the way, you're going to run into unknowns. You're going to run into that. Well, it rained on this day that you were going to go paint the outside, and now you have to use that and plug
Yeah,
that in somewhere else. And then, like, all of those unknowns. And you know what? The electricians, you built out this electric floor plan, and they said screw it, and they did something else, and now you have to go repeat the work, and now you can't finish the build out because you have to go
of
get someone to
course.
redo that work. And there's things like that. And you run into things digitally as well, where something gets maybe coded, and it doesn't reflect what you needed it to do, and now you have to problem solve there. So from a high level, there's a lot of extra pieces to the puzzle there. And so what I learned was how to niche my services. And one of the most
Sure.
immediate changes that I made in the business was taking out the build out piece, was taking out the interior design, was taking
Okay.
out the visual. And because I kind of cut that piece off, it made room for branding in terms of strategy, identity work. And then if I started with story in the heart of who someone was, then I can add from there depending on what I feel is a good fit. I didn't need to start from something that was already super heavy, even though I loved it, but that was the immediate need that I had to do. And so that's why I share, like, it's a project that cut things in half for
Yeah.
me and then allowed me to move forward with extra baggage. And then I sprinkled it in. Like, I still do clients that have storefronts, but it didn't start like that. It had to start tight and lean.
With some hard lessons learned there for sure. Um, you talk about helping leaders turn fuzzy ideas into something clear and confident. Where does the fuzziness usually come from?
Great question. So I love this part of the job the most. Um, and I'll share a little bit of the process too of what that looks like. But fuzziness, I think, is due directly to someone not fully, they don't have the answers and they're looking for the answers. And so if
Okay.
if let's say a client is opening a psychiatrist practice, they're really good at the clinical practice and the client experience and the delivery of how to get comorbidity between ADHD and anxiety and the overlap.
Yeah.
Come on, we can't even talk that language. But but they might not know the best message that resonates to their audience that they're serving. So they
Okay.
know the practical technical use, but they don't know how that 12-year-old is actually resonating, and the parents are trying to solve the problem from the kid but then looking for someone to solve that problem for their own child. So there's an ecosystem there. And so someone might come to me and say, hey, I need to level up the branding, or my website doesn't truly reflect the quality and the care that I actually give to my clients. That's where one of those
Got
problems would come in on my end, and they would have fuzziness about them, how that needs to look. What does that need to communicate? What is the story that someone needs to walk through in order to understand enough about that practice and take action and reach out? So I'd say the fuzziness is that unknown, and sometimes even the thing that you don't know as well. And so
Right. Right.
I'll
Right.
talk about process here of how, just high level, how you go from that fuzzy to the clarity piece. But every client for me goes through step one, which is what I call a brand ignite session. And it's actually before any project is sold or done or executed, we start with this brand ignite session. It's a 2-hour deep dive session where we get to the bottom and the heart of what I'm extracting the DNA. And very similar to, if you think of like what we just talked about, Owen Foster, and how you're using riddles to
Right.
really uncover something, We're getting down to first
Yep.
principles. Where does this story start? Who is your actual audience? What is making you different than all those around you? And then we wrap all that up and I deliver them a brief. And that brief is the roadmap to clarity. And when they read that, that is everything that they
That makes a
talked
lot of
about,
sense.
but then it's everything that I also recommend from a strategist standpoint. And then it becomes the blueprint to the house or the brand or the website or whatever we're executing.
That's great. That's great, Jacob. That makes a lot of sense to have uh, a reframing in your terms. So it helps them understand what your process is, what you're going to be doing as you go through
Yeah.
looking at their brand and how to help them.
Yeah. Thank you.
Jacob, you talk about building brands that rally. What does that actually mean?
You know, it this concept has absolutely evolved over the years, but fundamentally what I've realized is branding, you can build polish. You even have accessibility to really fancy tools like AI and all these other tools to create things. So the creation of things is very easily accessible, but that doesn't always mean that it correlates to who someone is and what they actually, mean. And so brands that rally is specifically around creating a concept where it's not about the polish, it's about standing for something with meaning, something that's real. And so from a branding
Okay.
standpoint, it's no longer, it's not about uh, aesthetics. Aesthetics are part of it, but it's about understanding how that visual identity is actually communicating who someone is, how they serve, how they show up. And so brands at rally is just that big idea, for what that concept means.
Excellent. Excellent. What's the difference between a brand that people will notice and a brand that people believe in?
So I think fundamentally you can absolutely stand out, but until you actually okay, so here let me give you a story. So when I was playing hockey and I was I don't
Okay.
know about 9 or 10 years old. Well, I was playing outdoor. I was roller hockey, and everyone looked the same, same gear. We're all playing with pucks, whatever the brands are. And I remember one day, I wanted to wear pink roller laces in my skates. I don't know why. It just felt a little bit different, and I saw them on the shelf, and we went and bought them. I put them on, and it felt a little uncomfortable and it was a little different because it was standing out against what typically, boys, and even though there was a co-ed league, but nobody wore pink laces. It was just an odd thing. So,
Right.
you've
Right.
got the jokes and the comments and the things, and it was kind of a little uncomfortable, but you know what? I kind of owned it. And what then happened from that is another person started wearing pink laces. And then another person started wearing pink laces. And slowly you didn't get all of them, but you got a mass and a movement that started because of this one act. And the act kind of stood for, all right, I don't want to blend in either. Right. Like I don't want to
Right.
that became like a signal for someone to be able to uh, be a part
It
of
was okay to
this.
be different.
Yeah, it stood for something, like, okay. And it
Yeah.
didn't mean you had to be the first one either. It just meant that you could be a part of this thing that stands for something. So it wasn't about the pink laces. It was about because pink laces get noticeable, but until they actually mean something, that's the difference of how something rallies and how movements are started and how the glue actually spreads and is contagious around communities.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Do you ever find that purpose driven brands can hide behind their mission instead of communicating it clearly?
Do I ever find them hard? Okay, yes. In other words, do do they are they good at communicating their mission? Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think you hit the question in the question. um no, I run into this a lot. I do. I think one of the biggest challenges, especially for nonprofit clients of mine, is they don't know if they're actually communicating properly what they're all about.
Exactly. Is
Hands down,
that they
probably,
assume
yeah.
people already know because of who they are that this
It's
is our
assumed
mission.
for. You look, I'm helping
Yeah.
this person. Isn't it
Yeah.
automatic that, I help? cause hunger, cure hunger for people, whatever the solution is, or the mission. But no, they definitely it's not that they hide. It's I don't think they don't know any better, because again, it's very similar to the psychiatrists. They're not experts in communication in terms of how they present themselves, and they don't maybe have the framework or the storytelling skills to communicate. And one of the coolest reframes that I love helping clients, and specifically, I own a nonprofit myself, and I own it with my mom.
Okay.
And we have a campaign coming. It's called Good Vibrations, and it's a recovery house for women. And we've had it for about 4.5 years. And our job is just to help people struggling from addiction navigate a life worth living. So we help
That's
ladies in the
awesome.
house. My mom is, right in recovery and is a peer specialist and a counselor and knows all those strategies. And I'm on the strategy lens, and I'm like, how do we grow this thing? How do we make it better? How can we help someone's life, flip over to being independent and actually, you know, go almost leaving the things in the past, but learning from them and moving forward, so you don't make the same mistakes. Like if you are in a mode
Okay.
where addiction comes into play, maybe your habit now is to call a friend instead of picking up that drink. There's a lot of nuances within the world of addiction, but my point here is there's a campaign coming up, and I remember talking to my mom about this. How can we market this? How can we talk about this? And my mom will be the first one to be that prime example of, how do we communicate exactly what we do in a concise way. And
Right.
she struggles asking people for money. And I'm
Of
sure
course.
that every other nonprofit out there also struggles with asking people for money. But here's the thing, if you don't have fundraising and money coming in, you can't help anybody. And so the biggest reframe that we can ever do for ourselves is communicate how this impact and how our mission is actually going to help someone else. And it's almost like we're doing them a disservice if we aren't asking them to be the vessel to helping this person through our mission. But it feels salesy
Right.
on the front end. And all people, including myself, struggle with that too. But it doesn't have to be salesy business. It can be solving a problem business, right? We are just trying to
Sure.
communicate
Sure.
from that lens. And so that's always a big challenge that I see, especially when it comes to missions and, how do we make sales? That's just the nonprofit version. There is the for-profit version too, but
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's great. And you're finding ways of helping people move past that murkiness in their the side of the business that they aren't the specialists in.
right.
Um, Jacob, what's inspiring you outside of design right now?
Okay. Well, I can share one thing that I just implemented. What are we in April last year? Um, because I realized I wasn't always making enough space for the creativity in my world. Like I'm
Hmm.
sucked and absorbed into the business. It's becomes my day to day. So all I can do is create boundaries that allow me to have space to live life and have a life, and
Oh, yeah.
also be inspired. And so I love to travel, and I love to do new experiences. But the thing that I implemented last year is what I call a Jake Day. And so a Jake Day, and you laugh, but here's the thing: you own a business like me, you have to brand
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
that commits
Yeah.
you to actually taking time for yourself. And I put it in once a month. I'll take a Wednesday in the middle of the week, and I'll just split that whole week, and I will just dedicate it time all to me. And whatever fills my cup. And if that's, hey, I need to go for a hike and I need to be active, or I need to sit on the couch and watch Netflix and just, breathe, or am I ready for an adventure, or do I need a massage to take care of myself? Whatever across the board my self needs, it becomes a way for me to actually prioritize that time for myself. And that, no matter, even if it's not creativity specifically, that space of
Right.
putting myself first fills my cup up, and then it makes room for the joy of creativity and design and my work and everything around that. And then I also can travel, or I can do those things, and then that becomes a way for me to bring that back into my life. I mean, if you got a full cup for a Jake versus a half cup, I'm 100% of a half cup is still a half cup. So I had to learn how to fill that
Right.
cup
Right.
up. And that's one way that I've, managed to be able to, transform that into something that works for me on my end.
That's awesome. Yeah, giving yourself the permission to have that Jake day is pretty important. Um, Jake, what does success look like for you right now?
Success. Okay. Uh, well, I'll share this because I know there might be people in your audience that are working through what that definition for them still looks like potentially.
Yeah,
And I'll share what it used to be for me.
perfect. Perfect.
And then what it's turned into, because I think that in its own right, that transformation is probably one perspective on how I see it. But for me, success was originally the recognition of others. Success was what others defined as good for me. Meaning, if I made this design, and let's speak specifically to how it is in maybe design school or how your early career is, but you're learning all
Yeah.
these fancy things and you're learning these skills. And internally, there's always this collaboration and competitiveness on how this work is going to get to the next level. And I think behaviorally, I always was comparing my work to the next person or the next thing, even though it was leveling up my own internal work. But I was then defining what everyone else was doing around me to the worth of my work, if that makes sense. So my self worth was
Yeah.
defined a lot by the value of how others saw it. And, I wanted the design awards and I wanted all of that recognition, and that felt good. But what happened on the end was and what slowly started to happen is like I wasn't as motivated internally for what I was doing. And this I felt that early in my career because I felt like I was chasing something that was kind of like an illusion. Like in those moments, yes, it felt like it was the right thing. But once the dust settles and you got to create a career and pay your bills and this has to be a thing, I was like, design awards aren't giving me the fulfillment as much as it would be helping someone that just started a small business and maybe they were short on a budget and this wasn't going to be the biggest most fanciest project or what designers could say as an award-winning project, but you were making a fundamental impact to this person's life and you're going to transform them overnight with the work that you can do. Like that was fulfilling to me, and it took a couple of those for me to realize, oh, I need to dig down into the why of what I actually love to do. And that why for me since that day has always been helping others and making an impact, and it hasn't changed fundamentally at all. It's stayed on there. It's gotten denser, it's gotten more fruitful, it's gotten more aligned. It's allowed me to find all the other things and start to realize what it is that I truly want to chase after life. But that was the old definition, and now because I had to layer that off and reframe those limiting beliefs of, no, I'm good in my own right. I don't need someone else to define my success or my value. So let's conquer that reframe. Now, what does it look like for me to find my own value? Well, I love challenging myself. I love growing. I learn every single day. And for me, failure is a part of that journey. And the quicker you fail, the quicker you can keep moving and pick yourself right back up. And I know that you're on the West Coast, I'm on the East Coast, but we have Rocky. I don't know if you ever seen the Rocky movies over
Yeah.
here, but
Oh yeah.
Philadelphia,
Oh yeah.
they're in our own right, righteous place. Like we are very much about an underdog story. We're very much about you get
Sure.
hit hard, you get up harder, you're very resilient. And so that started to become the backbone of success as I moved forward. And then the more aligned I got with what I internalize as my purpose and my why, then now success is the pursuit of greatness internally for me. Everything else is a bonus. But if I'm aligned with where I want to go and the impact that I want to make and the people that I want to help along the way, that's how I define success.
Awesome. Awesome. I think that's a great evolution from a young designer to somebody that is now more matured, both in their practice, but also in their thinking as a human, which leads me into you had mentioned you are fluent in human. What does that mean in practice?
Oh man, I love that. I love that question. I Fluent in human. became this like catchphrase for me early on because for me, I have this first off, I love helping people. So it fundamentally starts with my why. But I'm also an extrovert and I'm very charismatic and very outgoing. And that personality trait has allowed me to immerse myself into the world of business in a way that I can go out and network. And that social activity becomes a little easier for me than maybe someone that was introverted or someone that,
Right.
isn't as naturally fluent in conversation and making connections and, building relationships. And building relationships is the heart of owning a business. And a lot of the career for anyone, honestly, in this day and age, like having relationships is fundamental for how you'll continue to grow and get to that next step. But being fluent in human, one cool little superpower of mine is like I could walk into a room of 20 strangers and instantly have smiles on and laughs on their faces within a couple minutes. And it's not from a place of disingenuine, it's a place of authenticity. It's a place of, man, I just want to make someone else's day better. And so that's just how I show up. And so fluent and human became my own natural catchphrase of like, man, like I feel like I'm very in tune with building relationships and, loving people and helping them. And that became just a, philosophy on how I see the world and how Jake, gets to actually show up and present himself to others.
Sure. Yeah. 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 Looking ahead in the next decade or so, where do you see design as being most needed?
I bet you ask this question to everybody, Max.
I do. I do. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I know it's probably a challenging, difficult answer for everyone too. Well, first off, I'll say this. The and was it design or creativity? What was the specific wording?
Oh, I can open that up. I'm really looking more of where is design needed, and you can kind of frame that
I'm gonna
as
take it.
kind of yeah, like feel free to
Yeah,
reframe it.
yeah. Well, okay, so speaking from a design standpoint, but also how this is translating into the future, and I like the stretch of 10 years, but I think right now we're in this, oh my God, we're living in the future is what it feels like. Like we are
Yeah,
every day, there's a new tool every day, every week, every month, every year. There's something that is growing so fast with this world of technology. Like just go back 3 years ago, like everything was so different in terms of how we use the tools that we use day to day. Like now AI has
absolutely.
absolutely immersed itself into the daily, practices almost everyone in whatever career path they do. And so we're living in that moment right now where AI is a huge filler. And it's funny because we also see, I have a couple clients that will recommend sprinkle in that analog experience right now because people have nostalgia
Sure.
because things are moving so quick with technology. So I think there's a world that we live in the next year where analog and moving forward will, become something that we want to bring back. So we're fighting this. How do we push forward but not lose the past? And we're going a couple steps forward, a couple steps back. And I think over the next 3 to 5 years, we'll continue to do that. If we were to stretch into year 10, I think that's when fundamentally the systems around us in the world are going to change. I think it takes a lot for things to change over the years, especially let's take the education system. Like the education
Right.
system, I think you'll start to see fundamental change in 10 years from now because our markets are changing so quickly. The way teachers are presenting information, the way we collect information, it's 10 years out. I can imagine. I don't know if it's a hybrid system where it may not be the exact walls that we see right now in education, providing all of the information. But I think there are facilitators that are I think the experience of education will be changed because I think the students and the kids and everyone growing are going to be more empowered and they're going to have tools and access to things. So I think what becomes important as we're growing is how you are the navigator of your own path from the critical thinking standpoint, from the strategic lens standpoint, from the curiosity and creativity standpoint. I think the more that we can empower people to command their own shit and be the thinkers behind it, That's the most
Okay.
important value that I see us transforming into. And I think that's what's going to lead the future of the next 10 years out.
That's great. I j- recently saw a post that said not very long from now, we are going to have people selling premium services that are non AI that state that this was done
Yes.
with not AI.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it's, basically that, response back to this eventually, like you said, it's just going to shift how we structurally do things. Um, and kind of what we bring to the table will influence that.
Now, do you also see that, like, I would almost define that pushback phase as the human phase. Like, people are like, "Whoa,
Yeah.
whoa, technology's going crazy. Wait, wait, we gotta add the human back," right? And maybe that human is like,
Yeah.
"All right, we gotta add the analog experience prior to the adoption of AI." But I think that's
Yeah.
what we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think what then will end up happening is that's kind of that rounding of the bell curve. And then we'll find what's the median that
Yeah.
works as a balance.
I I think we'll hit it,
Other,
and then it'll balance. Yeah, it'll balance itself right out.
otherwise we go into Terminator territory and we don't want to be going there. So
We might just go there, dude. Now
who
there's some
knows?
people on the other side that's fighting for the good of humanity. I'm sure, they're gonna put up a
Sure.
hard fight and we'll be able to level out the playing field. So I'm not too worried about that.
Um, Jacob, if there was a mindset shift you wish more designers embraced earlier, what would it be?
I love that question too. Um, I think mindset shifts that can be embraced as early as you can get it. Um, I would have to say is own your voice. I think
Oh, great.
owning your voice, and now this is not something that I was empowered to do early on as well. Like, I remember when I was a child growing up, I had a very unique experience growing up. I had two moms growing up, and having two moms is a different world than having maybe a father and a mom. And fundamentally, my childhood was slightly different. And what would happen is I remember kind of hiding some of those things that made me super unique, as almost a way to protect myself, because I just wanted to fit in and I just wanted life to be normal.
Oh, sure.
And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
as a byproduct, my life was kind of hiding all those unique elements and theoretically hiding my voice. And so, up until I, was empowered and worked through these experiences on life to be able to actually understand how that provides value to the world and how being unique actually sets you apart, that's when owning my voice actually took off. And I had to figure out what that truly meant to me and what felt authentic to that. But that's my message. And I'm sure there might be other people out there that need to hear that. But the mindset shift is you have to embrace who you are. You have to own your own voice early on, because that's what makes you unique in this world. It's not, I think, being something that's different is empowering and is unique and is that's an incredible thing. I don't think it's, I don't think, blending in is where we want to be, because everyone has unique character, installments of themselves and personalities and these incredible traits. And that's what makes this world a beautiful place. So go ahead and,
Is
lean in.
is there anything that whether it's a technique or a tip that you would say for somebody that is a little hesitant about putting themselves out there with their own voice, if you will?
Yeah, I wonder where that shows up for them. I mean, I immediately off the dock, I'm thinking one of the places that shows up even for my own clients is just being on social media, and how do you show
Hmm.
up with that visibility? And I think that looks different for everyone. I specifically on a content standpoint, not everyone has to market themselves out there, right? Like, there's no perfect rule to that. But I believe that, whether you're showing up with your face on a video or you're just sharing your thoughts, I think the world needs to hear that. there's going to be other people that have very similar upbringing or, or mindset or, world views as you. And I think just being able to share your perspective is empowering. And so I think, I wonder what the baby step is there, but I think putting yourself, I think the first step is to just have awareness of what those limiting beliefs are for you. And it may not be owning your voice. That's one that I'm thinking on, but I think having awareness and just, I do a lot of journaling. And I think maybe that
Okay.
is also an incredible next step as well, is to just start to learn and be very in tune and aware with how your thoughts are connecting and reacting to the world and how you're internalizing things. And by that definition, you'll start to see patterns and observations that you're like, oh, like what rises to the top, good or bad, like don't hold back, no
Sure.
judgment. But those are the things that
Yeah.
have the most opportunity for growth. And I think that's where you start.
Great. Great. Jacob, thank you so much for the conversation. I appreciate you taking the time today. This has been fantastic and kind of a little bit of a full circle moment to have you on something that you helped inspire.
Dude, I appreciate the time too. I thought, first off, I'm very proud of you, and I'm inspired by you, and I hope that that shows through to everyone else that's listening. And I'm happy to see how this unfolds. So thank you for having me on here.
Absolutely. And I'm Max Beach. Keep asking questions.